What it do, what it do, what it do, y'all. Welcome in for our very first edition of the Fog Down Under. I can't wait for you guys to see what we have in store. It's going to be a podcast all about DVD, especially about DVD here in the land down under. And who better to be kicking off the show with one of my long friends, Spoker. How are you doing, brother? How have you been?
Honestly, look, I've been getting over this really bad flu myself, as down under in the wintertime, the flu has been spreading a lot. So make sure y'all are staying cozy, warm, safe, hydrated, all the important things. But it's a pleasure to be here tonight for the Fog Down Under. It's awesome to be a part of a podcast, and it's really a lot more of a cozier, laid back and relaxed kind of vibe to be able to talk about some Dead by Daylight, comp, new releases, all sorts of stuff. We're going to go into everything. We're going to be talking tonight very soon, but it's great to be here, Q, and always a pleasure to be on the desk with you.
Oh, yeah, I can't wait to dig in, especially because, last week we took the week off. We are going to kind of talk about what unfolded last week because we had a nice 1v1 event. That's for a little bit later in the show, but we're getting ready to wind up into week number 4. But, last week was kind of big. We had a new chapter introduced as far as on the actual game side. We're not just comp DVD, which of course affects us a lot. So I kind of want to talk about the few things there, right? We got the new killer, the dredge. We got a new survivor with some perks, a new map even. And it's just interesting. One, I wanted to kind of get your thoughts overall on the dredge, because if I can be honest with you, I love the aesthetic. I love like the ambiance. I think the lore and everything with it is really good. I just feel like we're just a little off from it being like the perfect killer, right?
Yeah, look, from all of the, I say recent, but there's been a lot of killer releases in true behavior fashion, having so many releases. God, how many have there been each year? But to really to say that this is the perfect killer release, you'd just be quite a bit off. I don't think anything's really going to compare to the Blight release, because for a killer to be viable in competitive play and just be good in casual, and to have a lot of people have a love-hate relationship, or it's just, there's not going to be a killer like the Blight that behavior will ever be able to release. But I feel like Dredge could very well be the closest we'll ever get to that, and there's so many reasons why that's the case. But yeah, let's talk about that now. Hey,
so like your initial thoughts, right? I feel like, especially like playing him at first off, I feel like I didn't play the PTV. I did watch a lot of the PTV. I want to say the PTV weekend was when my neighbor cut the internet line, and that's a story for another day. That's not DVD related. Yeah, that was a whole mess. But what I was really intrigued at, because when I first watched it, I kind of liked like the whole nightfall. Like it feels what an ultimate power should feel like for a killer, right? Like everything gets dark. The killer has the ability to traverse the map quicker through the use of the lockers a lot quicker when the nightfall's there. You can't really see where you're going as far as the survivor. But then when they released it, and we'll talk about console in a whole nother second, because that's just a whole nother mess. But even for like us who can use filters, I can't tell if I'm running to the next tile or if I'm running edge map. And I just don't know how that makes me feel for a game that's struggling with retaining players. You know what I mean?
To be a little bit like, to talk a bit more about not sort of knowing where you're going when the nightfall hits, like I feel like it forces you to be so much more attentive to where you are, which way you're facing. If you're sitting on a gen or if you're traversing the map, it forces you to focus more than I feel like a lot of people really want to be focusing, especially
That's
when
probably
playing
fair, honestly.
casually
Yeah.
in public matches and stuff. Because at the end of the day, a killer release, everything that behavior does is it needs to be catered towards the larger majority of the community, and there's just not as many people in the higher end of the spectrum as opposed to your casual players. So I feel like this is a really good thing to force people to be a little bit more attentive with the game instead of just switching brain off, gens and out, another day, another dollar.
Think it adds kind of to more of the immersive, like, embracing the horror aspect of the game that I think some of us have kind of forgot once we hit that, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 hour mark.
Yeah. But there was something else I was going to talk about with Nightfall, but it just completely skipped my mind. But go ahead, Gear.
I was just, again, like the Nightfall, I don't mind the Nightfall. I think the big thing with Nightfall when I'm looking at, and I'm actually going to break it down. I don't want to talk about too much because I break it down more in detail on my video, but it's like, if I look at Nightfall and how much it boosts the rest of the power, I feel like it should be something. I mean, it's our first look at an ultimate would arguably be Mikey, right? With his tier 3 status and the ability to insta down and things like that. And I feel like how often Mikey even gets his tier 3 compared to, on average, how much a Dredge can get like Nightfall. Not even if they're like completely owning the game, because of course the way the Nightfall works, right? If you have more people injured, you get more tokens. If you're, if you're more aggressively, using the teleports, your Nightfall builds up as well, stuff like that. But if even I've been in games where no one's been injured, and then there's still one Nightfall to the other, and it's like, bro, come on, man. It's kind of like if his power lets his power spike, kind of like Oni. As the survivor, I should be able to deprive that, not and allow it to not happen again without add-ons. And I don't know. It's weird to me, honestly.
No, I 100% agree with that. I reckon it's obviously not the most creative or enjoyable thing when killers are just sort of much more similar to each other than what would be desirable. But to have Dredge's Nightfall be similar to how Oni's power works, I feel like would have been a much more healthier and more balanced addition to the game with how it gets implemented. Like, I 100% agree that things like it's hard to say whether it's a very powerful ability when it comes to the competitive mindset, but for casual play, it's quite devastating, especially when you're not on comms or anything like that. So it needs to be something that good teamwork can be rewarded and deny that sort of power, like that's just the thing that I think about the most when we talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be intrigued because I know, we were kind of talking with some people in the back before things got started. They mentioned potentially we might even see the Dredge get inserted in towards the back end of this season. And I feel like when we talk about on the competitive level, it's different because now you have people in comms and you can at least, there's some level of communication. I think that's the other thing for me when I kind of start to break down the Dredges thing is I don't think, I have a hard time when killers capitalize on people who aren't playing the games with friends. Like, that feels weird because I shouldn't be forced to play the game with friends in order to feel like I have a balanced game in a 4v1. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying there. Like,
but I do gotta say though, I'm excited. If we do see it in comp, I think it'll be really fun.
I'm just worried that it might end up as sort of, I don't want to say like another Onryo, but with Dredge's power focusing on being more or less unpredictable with your approach and how you traverse the map kind of thing. Obviously, easily Dredge is more powerful than Onryo. There's no doubt about that. But
I mean, Dredge is basically the strongest back to hook killer even over the Hag now, right? Because there is no counterplay to it.
Yeah, like there's almost, if you hook a survivor in a gym, a jungle gym, or even hill hook, sometimes you're gonna have lockers close by, and you can teleport back to that hook quite quickly and also preemptively as well. If you know that someone's going to be going for that save and you've got nothing productive to do. Like, I really love that Dredge has that ability. It's not sure whether to say he or they, but I reckon it's really nice.
Now, what I do got to say also, as far as with the Dredge, I feel like if I don't know if you knew this or if we had people in chat who knew this, But when you have lockers that are side by side with the dredge, quick tip, we also do that here. The 2 lockers side by side, you only need to lock one of the doors, and the dredge will always be forced to go to the locked door. So like
Now
if
that's
I'm
something
like
I didn't know.
so like on the back side of some of those tiles, or even like some of the ones where they're putting out in the middle of nowhere where the 2 lockers side by side, right? If you only lock one, they'll be forced to go to the locked one. So then that way you can use the other locked one, because of course once they break out of the locker, the lock breaks, you can't use it anymore, right?
Yeah.
So then you can use the other of the pair, lock it, and then they'll be forced to go to the locked one. The only time it's different, I see Yobro saying it in chat. It does prioritize if there's a survivor inside, which sucks for us head-on enjoyers. But
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to have balls of steel to be rocking a head-on Swift against a dredge, right?
Listen, man, we do this thing. Actually, I got a clip out there. I think. Well, I don't think I've released. I got to find it of me head-oning a dredge. It was really, really satisfying.
That's something that will bring me back to DVD. Just head-on memes. Just sign me up. It's done. I'm in there.
I have been having so much fun recently with what I call the boom boom build. Blast mine, flashbang, quick and quiet head-on.
Easy.
And I actually the other day hit my first quad. So it was I 99'd a gen that had a blast mine on it with a flashbang in hand and a flashbang arm to go, right? So they kicked the gen. I finished it. I dropped my flashbang. They got blinded. I jumped into a locker, head on, and flashbanged again. And it went into an escape.
Oh, dude, that's
It was
awesome.
so beautiful. It's on YouTube, by the way.
Like
it was absolutely gorgeous.
Feel like I am a big enthusiast of back in my prime of DVD. I would say going for just going for a clip, where you chain together so many different things and just make it work. Like I remember I was super stoked about a while ago, just using any means necessary to stun someone with the same palette back to back, and I was.
Did you ever do it with a flashbang?
No. Just a beamer with double add-ons to increase the blindness duration. That's how I used to do it. But yeah, that's a whole discussion for another day.
So while we're talking about, because of course with the new killer we introduced new perks and things, and I wanted to talk about this because it seems like every killer they release, we just passively buff Huntress. So I wanted to talk about the new perk, Darkness Revealed, right? It's the perk where you check a locker, you get to see auras of people within lockers like across the way.
I believe it's an 8-meter radius from lockers.
I think it's 8 to 10 depending on the level. Is that right? It's like 8, 9, 10, or 6, or maybe it's 6, 7, 8. It's one of those two.
We'll confirm that, but
it's like constant aura reading, bro. Like if you just huck hatchets and then you go reload, you just get more aura readings, especially because since they, put lockers everywhere for the dredge, like it's just constant aura reading. It's kind of crazy.
It really is. And as they add more aura revealing perks to the game, people are starting to realize, oh, this will probably be pretty good on Huntress, or this will be pretty good on insert range killer here. So, for
Darkness
example,
Revealed, Floods of Rage. Oh,
yeah, I was just about to say Floods of Rage. Like when that came out with that was with which killer was it? Was
Onryo,
it
right?
Onryo?
Yeah,
I believe so. I think of Pain Resonance and Floods of Rage. Yeah, Pain Res being artist. I just Scourge Hooks confused me so much as to which killer they were released with. But the fact of the matter is, the aura revealing perks for Huntress are just getting crazier and crazier. And I'm honestly terrified to be going against Huntresses with Darkness Revealed, Iron Maiden, Barbecue, Floods of Rage, and just everything you're doing is just rewarding you and giving you aura revealing. And I feel like it makes it a lot easier to just switch your mind off and play Huntress,
Yeah, and I mean, even low key too, like it's one of those things. I was thinking about it the other day. I wasn't sure if it would make Onryo a little bit stronger, just in the sense of I know exactly where to go with my next teleport to be able to build more of the condemned status. Because like that's one of the things with Onryo is like sometimes you kind of have to force the condemned status, and I wonder if that would be a way to do it. But I also wonder if that pulls away from the active like game plan of the rest of your your objective, right?
But at the end of the day, like I think it goes without saying that darkness reveal is very easily just a straight up buff for
Mm.
Huntress, and I if this doesn't get banned on Huntress, then I don't know. Like
Yeah.
we need to get rid of that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see as more people realize it for sure. But it is nice, I feel like often in at least in recent updates, we've seen where the killers will get perks that kind of shift the meta, right? But it doesn't always work
Mm.
the same for survivors. And I feel like especially for the like pub matches where survivors like to go for the plays and the memes, and we all know how much survivors love flashlights. I really like seeing them introduce residual manifest, which was basically like a pharmacy for flashlights, right? But I got a question for you. Do you feel it's worth it when it comes to the time to find a chest, empty the chest of the, whatever it has in it, then rummage it to get said flashlight just to be able to like build up your kit? Because it's almost always a yellow flashlight that I've found. Or was it better to go with more of your plunderers build with ace in the hole and get a better flashlight that way anyways?
I This is a really interesting topic, right? And I feel like I have a lot to bring to the table here. So residual manifests on its own, right? Not bringing in a flashlight as well. Just stock running residual manifest on its own, I'd say is it's average. It's not insane. It's not, it's not terrible. It's not insane. It's just sort of average. Being able to
Mm-hmm.
it takes a while to get a beamer. You could do it at any point in the game, and like it doesn't matter if someone else is. Oh, Mr. Dwight Fairfield _01 has opened every single chest on the map. You just go and
Right. I
rummage
do
and
like
get
it to
your beamer.
rummage. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it acting sort of as how pharmacy would act. So you can still get around to looping the killer for 20,000 years and be able to get a beamer towards the end. But I feel like when paired with stuff like appraisal, just being able to rummage faster and that sort of thing, you could bring appraisal, get a guaranteed yellow flashlight, get it quickly, and get to business. Or better yet, just bring a really good flashlight into the trial with you. And if it ever runs out, you can always go back onto residual manifest and get that yellow beamer towards the end of the game. So, and then there's the whole talk about the blindness that it gives. So I believe
Mm-hmm.
20 seconds of blindness when
Which is
you
nice.
hit a blind. It's really, really nice. I'm just unsure whether or not hitting a chain blind resets that timer, puts it back to 20 seconds
Well,
or
I
so
think it
kind of
says
thing.
first time, right? I thought it said first time you blind them.
Yeah, I believe it would, as even when doing challenges in the Rift and stuff, if you hit chain blinds, it'll only count that initial blind. You have to, get unique blinds again to be able to get
Mhm.
that challenge progress, and in this case, get the blindness prompt. So whether or not
I
you have to
have
wait
noticed
for
it
20
refreshes like
seconds.
the perk though. You know how some perks have like the cooldown on the bottom right? Like this next
Mhm.
time you do it, it does send it into cooldown. So I don't know if it affects it a second time. I just feel I know from the wording, right, that it says that they only get the blindness for the first time for the 20 seconds or whatever.
Well, regardless of how it comes into play, though, the fact that it
Mhm.
hides auras from the killer is obviously something we haven't seen in DBD yet, having
Right.
a status effect that both survivors and killers can be affected by. And this is a question I ask myself so much when I try and put thought into how behavior can make DBD at least somewhat more unique as they release new updates without completely ruining the game. And I think this has been a really, really good addition.
Yeah, I think too because it also kind of like now it adds value to some of those flashlights at the palette, right? Like kind of before, if you think about it, it was kind of a waste of your flashlight and your battery, right? Because you're not getting as much value as you would, going for it's not as game changing, I should say, as when you're going for a save or other things like that. But now if you know that a gen's almost done, and especially like let's say Rancor's in play, you hit them with the flashlight, now you don't have to worry about your auras, right?
Rancor doesn't reveal. It's a bit of murmur. I think you're thinking of, right? Q or a reveal at the end, kind of thing.
Well, Rancor still does the shutter auras, right? Oh, I guess since it's a short shutter aura, it'd be different, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It's you would still be able to see the bubble auras, I believe.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
didn't
think
think about
blindness would
that.
get
Yeah,
rid of that. But like denying bit of murmur, and as we've just been talking about as
barbecue.
well. Yeah, barbecue, darkness revealed, anything like that. So
Hmm.
it'd be cool to see that coming into play like a lot more. Now, in like a competitive standpoint, I'm not too sure how that would work out.
Yeah,
I
I think it's
I
mostly a
don't
pub
think it
perk for
would.
real. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like as nice as it would be, you would very much so have to go out of your way by not only opening a chest and then rummaging, but
Now, if
you
we're
know.
talking about comp perks, though, another perk that we did see introduced on the Survivor side that I do want to talk about just briefly before we actually kind of talk about 6 year, and then we'll talk about the comp stuff because I know that's what people
Mhm.
want us getting into.
Yeah.
But overzealous, right? So overzealous, if you cleanse a totem, you get the 4, 5, 6% increase to your gen repair speed until the health state change, right?
Mhm.
Would it be because I feel like if you look at just that in its own, it's not that strong of a buff. You need to do like what 2, 3 gens to basically make up for the time difference that it takes to cleanse a totem, the 16 seconds, right? But
Mm.
would it be too strong if you allowed that to stack? So let's say I'm the gen jockey for the team. You're holding aggro on the
Mhm.
killer. I spawn in, I find a totem. I
Mhm.
spawn in, I find another totem. I spawn in, or and then I find a third totem, like across the map, and then I start working on gens. Is
Yeah.
that too strong that that stacks until I'm injured? Because I feel like it says it's only until I'm injured. It's not too strong because it's still on the killer. But would it be too busted if it stacks?
It's this is a really really good question, and it's a very hard one to answer because the comparison I'm trying to make just mentally right now is prove thyself being a 15% increase just for having someone with you, right? The whole
Hmm.
setup of having to cleanse a totem and not get hit and not lose a health state if you want to keep that bonus is like it makes me think that having it stack honestly wouldn't be the most, you know, broken thing in the world. Like, yeah, you could probably get some pretty crazy gen repair speeds, especially if you pair in perks like Counterforce, which I know is very readily available in comp. Having a Counterforce overzealous combo to have someone go
On
around,
your
get all the
gen jockey?
totems,
Yeah.
start gen jockeying, keep them for the end game, put wake up, whatever it, other end game perks you need
Now
on
you don't
them
have
as
to worry
well.
about no ed anyways. Like that'd be kind of
Yeah.
nasty, honestly, if you get to work out in your. It is kind of like a risk reward, obviously, right? Because the first time they're
Mm.
hit, now all of a sudden, like that perk would be like off the table if you cleanse all the totems earlier or whatever. Let's say you cleanse 3 totems, like now you can only cleanse 2 more and get any more like benefit out of your perk. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then also at that point, like you wouldn't really want to focus too much on, you know, because a gen getting done in 80 seconds is normal, right? Having
Right.
a, let's say for argument's sake, 3 totems get cleansed before you start working on gens. You're doing it what 18% faster. That is like that cuts off like 15 seconds ish, 16 seconds faster.
Right.
The time you've spent to do all those totems, to go out of position, to break them all, and to
You're
have to
still
take the
not
risk
positive
of
on your time, right?
yeah, you wouldn't be positive on that time, and you're running the risk of if you lose a health state, that's all that time gone.
Right.
For the trade-off that you've gotten rid of a lot of the totems, that's awesome. You're trying to avoid no-ed, but I honestly, my closing thought on this topic would be that I reckon it would be from a competitive standpoint, it would be good if it's stacked, but in a casual public match experience kind of thing, I think it would be ridiculous,
Yeah. I think that's
which is
fair.
weird.
But
And
I would be excited to see because I think you had mentioned like the counterforce overzealous combo that I do also see getting brought up in chats. I think that is something that could be like interesting to watch, especially when we know the strategies that some of these teams put into like making sure you kind of keep one person tucked away, right? That could it adds the like an extra layer, right?
yeah, but by that logic, there's so many different ways, perk combinations, play styles that teams can come up with that when taken into account of the meta of comp play, how competitive play plays out at that point in time. Like, it's impossible for me right here to be able to say, hey, this is good, do that. But it's something to think about. And I think that's the most important thing that we want to emphasize here.
Yeah, for sure, and it's nice to see. Now, before we got today, actually. Well, today for me, I guess I don't know if it's dropped for y'all at this point. For it's drop, I'm guessing it dropped at the same time. So here in a couple hours, we got the 6-year anniversary event coming in. We've got some
Yeah.
cool masks and stuff coming. We're gonna get
Mhm.
to stack all these cakes just so I can get tunneled out at 4 gens. I'm looking super excited for that.
It's going to be
Um,
amazing.
but other than, just kind of some of the general typical woes that are, I wouldn't even say event related at this point. I feel like it's just DBD with MMR in 2022. I do like some of the cosmetics and stuff that looks like it's coming out. I am also excited with some of the changes coming soon to stay like the um prestige system. It now gives me some more options as to where I want to dump blood points and give the cakes to. You know what I mean? So really excited for that.
And the one thing that's probably got me stressed out the most is I love grinding blood points. I want to
Mm-hmm.
prestige 3 all of my characters before the new prestige system comes into play, which could be around Halloween time, could be later after that. I don't think it's been 100% confirmed when it's coming. We just know it's coming.
Right.
And the reason why I want to have everyone at P3 is because there's going to be a exclusive reward apparently for having your character prestige to P3 before the new system comes into play, which basically there'll be no limit to how many times you can prestige your characters, and you won't lose all your offerings, add-ons, items when you prestige in the future. They're completely changing how prestiging works. So getting this all done now, smashing out as many cakes as possible, getting as much event stuff as possible as
Mm-hmm.
well. It's going to be a big grind, I feel like, for me personally and for a lot of people in the 6-year events. So be safe in the fog out there, hey?
Yeah, it should be fun. Honestly, I loved last year's event because actually I started my time in the fog shortly before the 4-year anniversary. So like I don't know, whenever I start
Mm.
seeing the cakes flying, I start getting like oh, I remember when I first started playing sort of feeling going, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But other than that, like, yeah, I feel like you would mention like you love seeing. Hopefully, we'll see. I know MMR is still go on, but hopefully, killers could maybe tone down the sweat a little bit. Maybe we all can relax and enjoy the game of DBD that we love, and like you said, grind out those blood points. But I also always love to see the cosmetic and the arts because I think as much as people can have some frustrations maybe with some server issues or things like that. One place where DBD does continue to kill it is like their cosmetics and things like that. So I'm super excited to see what some of the event exclusives looks like.
From what I know, at least, is I believe it's only going to be the
Masks, right?
masks that are
Yeah.
event exclusive, and that just makes you think like, what are they going to do about like anniversary crowns? Because that's something that they've been doing consistently since the 4th year, I believe.
I'm wondering though, maybe the part of the reason they're doing the masks, I know the reason I don't wear my crown is because that thing stands up so far up my flipping head. You know what I'm saying? So if maybe the masks is a way for like people to earn something that they can then rock more consistently. You know what I mean?
I think the crowns are going to come regardless. They've been doing it every event, and there's going to be some sort of thing in play because we always have event exclusive cosmetics. We just haven't seen
Mm-hmm.
them as facial cosmetics before.
True. That's
Like,
fair.
we
That's
have
fair.
had hair cosmetics for David. I remember he got for 5th year. He got some glowing yellow hair that's not
Mm-hmm.
really glowing and not really yellow, but it's there. But yeah,
True.
no,
True.
they've
I am excited for it. I can't wait.
Oh yeah, 100%. And we're just gonna have to find out. I don't think it's dropped yet. I don't
No,
know the exact date or time, but it should be
I
soon.
believe it's scheduled for 4 hour or from again, essentially 4 hours from 11 minutes ago, I believe, is when it's
Mm.
slotted to drop. I think it's 11 Eastern time, 11 or noon usually. So here in like 4 or 5 hours. I know I've got a busy day of comp ahead of me, so I will probably not be digging into it too much today. But tomorrow I'll be doing quite a bit of it, so I can't wait. And then of course the weekend as well. But
No.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's anniversary is always a exciting part of the year. It's the last couple of anniversaries. Fifth year wasn't really super great for me. I feel like there was a lot more of people just not caring, and you
Right.
know, some people obviously playing a lot more. I don't want to say sweaty, but just more serious to sort of rub it in the faces of everyone bringing all their cakes. Oh, I want to farm blood points. I want to go against an AFK killer. Yay!
Yeah,
Which I
yeah, yeah.
get. It's frustrating as anything, but if everyone just didn't, take it super seriously, let's just have some fun,
Yeah, I'm hoping that's what we'll see too. But now's the fun part, Poker. All right, listen, check it
Mhm,
out.
mhm.
Uh, we
I'm
we
listening.
talked about the new stuff, but we're here to also talk about some competitive DBD. All right. And last week we did take a week off, but before that was week 3, which was basically getting to about the first third point of the season. We saw some pretty banger matchups. Um,
Mhm.
we actually saw our first. So we've been doing this best of 5 series or best of 5 sets for the series. And last week was the first time that we saw 2 teams need all 5 series to decide a winner. And that was in that Genesis versus Endless game, which was an absolute banger.
Yeah, no, it's so nice to see games going to the final sets, like the final tiebreaker
Mhm.
games. It just goes to show like how much effort each team is putting in, and all their practice is finally paying off. Even on the killers that are in your tiebreakers, you generally wouldn't really be practicing them as much as your main three, the first ones
Right.
up. So it's really nice to see that, and it was really nice to see. Now, personally, I haven't really been around in the DBD scene at all, really, for that much lately. But just to hear about some of the exciting games that have been going on, and it's just so awesome to hear.
Yeah, I think what was really exciting when we talked about that matchup in particular, right? When we talk about Genesis versus Endless. I mean, it's 2
Endless.
teams that have been around the scene like for a little bit, right? And
Mm.
so one, we talk about we had mentioned it was the first one to go 5, but just 2 teams that have been around. They've got experience. And then when we talked about the killer pool, I mean, it was a pretty diverse killer pool. We had everything from the Blight, which of course is kind of a staple.
Mm.
In DBD, we had the Cenobite, we had some Spirit, and it ended on the Plague. I always like seeing when matchups, especially like best of 3, best of 5s, end on things that are really more like micro based, like more like Plague, more like
Only even.
um, I would say Oni. I love Oni. Anybody who's watched my competitive DBD tier list over on my channel knows how much I love Oni. He's definitely one of my 2 favorite M1s to watch on the competitive level. But also I was thinking twins. Like I know a lot of people don't like that slow methodical end game for twins, but I think if you're talking about a tiebreaker where it separates 2 teams that are obviously so close, I like things that really just like need a complete team effort, you know?
Yeah, no, competitive DVD really just at the end of the day being a showcase of how well you can work as a team on the survivor side, or how well you can do individually as killer, and just being able to properly showcase that, especially against killers who, I wouldn't say prioritize, but capitalize on very methodical and precise gameplay like that. It's always a treat to see.
Now, as far as with these 2 teams, I expect that there are going to be teams that we're probably going to be looking at, playoff contention towards the end, right? But I think both teams, like just fighting all the way through, are going to be really excited to see where these 2 teams kind of go from here. We'll obviously talk about at least for actually both these teams have fire matchups this week that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But moving on from
Mm,
last week, we saw Cat Jam versus Owned, 2 teams that have been around a little bit, right? But
mm.
at the same time, I feel like when we talk about looking at the league play here for competitive DBD, for Dead by OCE, you're talking about 2 teams that have kind of been trying to like put the whole picture together. Like they can pick up some set points here and there, but really trying to piece things together for that final like, hey, we've understand the what the equation is in order to piece together some W's. And seeing these two teams, I know it was a 3-0 in favor of Owned, but I don't think it quite reflects just how close these two teams fought. It was really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, like it's super easy to look at a final score and see that a team got 3-0 and just think, oh wow, they must have done really poorly. It's a lot of people seem to forget about that. The way that set based scoring works is that the points that you accumulate during those trials, like for example, if you have like a 7-stage game where you normally get like a 15-15 point result and then have to go from that to, oh well, whichever team gets the set point is just from a tied game, so it could be, oh, what team really outperformed in one specific game, which then can wire down to one specific game changing moment that can win a team a set point. And I think just with the amount of experience that Owned has had in OCE throughout the countless years, I would say now, of competitive play, they very much so deserve that 3 set points victory.
And in case anybody was wondering down below on the scene, that is what the 0 points and 3 points. That's the 0 set points, the 3 set points. And yeah, I mean, so in that set there, we had gotten to see, so they started off with the nurse, which of course is a staple, but we got to see some Ghostface in the end, which was really, really fun to watch as well. And Ghostface, again, like the, Plague, it kind of breaks things down to like the micro. So when we talk about, for these teams, it really, it was really good. If y'all need to watch it, I have pretty well all of these over on the YouTube, but that was a really fun, like, again, even though it was a 0-3, it might not be the 5-set banger that we just got done talking about, but it was honestly a really, really fun matchup to watch, for real, for real.
And speaking of really fun matchups, next we're going to be talking about Assault and Revolution, which it was a 3-0 victory for Revolution once again, but to have Assault being put up against the highest seeded team in OCE, like that's a very scary task to have gone up against, but they still did a really good job.
Yeah, I think when you look at the game too, especially you had mentioned Assault being such a newer team, and there were a couple of times where I wouldn't say they've pushed Revolution to the limit, the farthest they've been pushed this season, but there were a couple of times I think they caught Revolution on their back foot, and they were like, oh wow, like, and I think they even surprised themselves. Right now, this one isn't going to be on the YouTube because we were having some technical difficulties. Our producer's PC went KIA, so I was having to set up everything, and we had time crunch, so they were kind of playing that offline. But we watched at least the last back half of it. Even still at that point, with Assault being down, there were times where just through very I don't want to say impossible win condition, but through very tough win conditions. And even if they happen to have like an early slip up in the trial, just continuing to fight all the way through. Assault's going to be one of those teams that if they continue to like ride the wave of growth, as long as they can kind of keep their heads up, because L's happen, right? The important thing is you got to turn you got to turn the L's, you got to learn from it. That way you don't worry, that way it's like not really a loss, right? You got to fail forward. I think with the team showing the fight that they do, if they can kind of keep their heads up, they definitely show some promise for sure.
Oh yeah, 100%, and it's always something to be super proud of, giving Revolution something to be scared about. So I'm sure everyone over at Assault should be very proud of their performance thus far and to continue to give it their all throughout the league.
And then as far as the last matchup that we had seen yesterday, week 3, again, not last week, but the week before, was Purgatory versus K20. That was kind of what we saw to wind down the week. And this was another one where we saw a lot of not typical picks for comp DVD. Like, I feel like Oni's started to become a staple here recently, right?
Yeah.
But we also saw the Twins and the Death Slinger. And this is again with Twins being the third set, the final deciding one. This is one of those 3-0s where, again, I don't think it quite explained how close these two teams were. Of course, Purgatory kind of having some background in comp here, and K20 being a newer team. But I think K20 is, again, another one of those teams where as long as they can continue to keep the heads up through the losses, they've shown some flashes of greatness for sure.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And I've been watching a lot of Purgatory, and I'm good friends with a lot of the people in Purgatory as well. And it's really good to see how they've been growing and improving as a team. But the exact same goes for K20 as well. I believe they are a much newer team than Purgatory, and we still saw some insane performances from them as well. Now, Some not as much of staple killer picks here with the Slinger and the twins and such, but I would honestly argue that Death Slinger, call me old fashioned, but I know there's a lot of people who love or hate Death Slinger in comp, and I feel like we used to see a lot more Death Slinger than we do these days, so it was nice to see him get picked.
Yeah, our friend Caleb is definitely one that seems to be that people either love to hate or hate to love. I'm not sure which one it is. But he's definitely still very, very fun to watch in comp. And I feel like, when we talk about Deathslinger in comp, it's like a lot of killers that got quote unquote nerfed, where it was really just more of like change in the play style, right? Like I would even
Mm,
argue the same with Spirit, except for like Spirit was, giving the survivors and
the
actual
directional.
counter play. But
Mm.
I would also argue that a good Spirit moving at Mach 7, it doesn't really matter. So it just made it to where it felt a little bit more fair on the survivor side. I'd still argue that it just changes how you play her a little bit, but I think it doesn't change where she changes in a tier list much. And I would make the same argument for Caleb too,
Yeah, like I feel like these changes try to like disencourage more. I want to say relaxed, but not having to put as much effort in and still being rewarded for that. I feel like is something that behavior is starting to try and phase out a bit, which I personally really love. I feel like that you need to be paying attention with what you're doing, and you need to be rewarded for skillful play as opposed to wow, I can stand at a pallet.
Yeah. The standing still mind game was always definitely a very big feels bad. At least now there's some counterplay, and also too. And I've been thinking about maybe seeing a Spirit 1v1 for Friday Night Fight soon, because I would be interested to see that counterplay. But yeah, I definitely like seeing some of those changes here. But Spoker, we've been at this for a little bit. I don't know about you, my friend. I need to go grab me a drink, and then when we get back, we're going to talk about the 1v1 event that we had last week. And
Mm,
then, today's Thursday, which
that's right.
means that week number 4 kicks off tomorrow. So we're gonna start breaking down some exciting matchups that we have starting off tomorrow as well. So we're gonna we'll be back with those two things here after a very quick break. What it do? We are back. Told y'all we wouldn't keep it too long there. Just need to go grab a drink. Hope you did as well. But I did want to talk about, before we start digging into this coming week's matchups, even though the matchups this week, I can't wait to really dig into. We got some bangers. Last week on the off week, we decided to do something, have a little bit of fun. We had a 1v1 event. Now, this wasn't the equilibrium style 1v1 event like we had seen in the past. This was going to be just kind of your traditional one killer, which was going to be Dixie's Hillbilly versus all comers. And honestly, Dixie was absolutely cranking, did a really good job of getting a whole bunch of very short chases. Hopefully, Dixie was farming some clips. But man, we also saw some survivors bringing out some juice as well.
Yeah, and just having a look at our winners that we had, it's so nice to see some familiar faces and also some newer faces as well, getting their name
Mm-hmm.
up on the board there. Now, it's certainly so much more enjoyable to watch Dixie playing Billy as opposed to having to play against his Billy.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's nice that he got the chance to get some flicks in, get some chases, and more so talking about the actual the format of the 1v1 event here as opposed to what we did for Equilibrium. I
Mm-hmm.
I really like how we have our one killer and all of our survivors sort of trying to climb up to the top with the best time. I feel like that's the best thing for a big community of people, and to allow a lot of people to have the chance to loop against a top level Billy.
Yeah, and it was definitely interesting too, because when we look at the top times, we had, Mr. Drunks was at 134, but the difference between fifth and first, which was Z7, of course, we had Sane at fourth at 141, Vision at 221, Backy at 231, and then Z7 was at 241. So what was interesting looking at it was, the gap between fifth and first was about a minute, but even the gap between fifth and third was about 50 seconds, right? And
Mm,
I feel like when I look back at the game that was played. Well, I know you had mentioned we have some new faces. I think we had some interest from people. We even actually saw during the event some international homies coming through. We had iPick pull up, try to do some looping. Of course, there are some ping differences, but it was nice to see some of the names that like I know from NAEU comp also pulling up, sharing the love around when it comes to a competitive DBD, especially on a unique 1v1 events. It's a whole different aspect from the 4v1 that we obviously see here every week. And it was interesting. I talked about it with Bazzy during the event, but what we saw, I feel like, from the difference of 1 through 3 compared to really the rest of the team, because there is a big difference even from 3rd and 4th, right? Was being a little more greedy with a couple of your filler palettes. You have to take the risk of either having a really short time because you lose the 50-50, or you greed it, you win the 50-50, and then you get a couple more revolutions around that palette. And I feel like that's what really separated those top 3 times from the rest of the pack, for real.
The mind games that you get to have against a Billy, especially on the filler palette loops as well, is it's hard to predict, especially when you're going against so many different players at once. You're playing against the same killer. You're playing against Dixie, and we all know how Dixie's going to be playing. There's not really that much he's going to be able to do to switch things up, especially when you've got poor old Jimmy going up first, as opposed to Jimmy who's going up last, who's being able to see, okay, so sometimes he does this, sometimes he does that. More time.
To be fair, I think Vision was the first person that went.
But look, Vision's Vision. Vision's a tank. There's no question about that.
But I could be wrong, but I think one of our top times was like literally the first chase.
Yeah, Vision coming in 3rd. It's so nice to see, man.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we had mentioned that, this was kind of more the traditional 1v1 event, right? You just have one killer, and it is definitely easier for like to get a whole bunch of people through. You just run an instant queue, like, you just run a long old queue, and just, cycle people through. But I wanted to pick your brain a little bit because I know that you were in the last 1v1 event, the Equilibrium style event, right? Where it's more the bracket style. Like, you have to play on both sides, right? You're literally one person against one person, and you are chasing them as well as running against, or you are running them, right? So I wanted to kind of talk about it because I know that obviously there was less. It was a 2-day event, and I think still had less chases. I could be wrong, or not less chases, but less like people involved compared to the amount of chases we got in on the one day because it's bracket style, multiple chases. But I gotta say, from the visual aspect, from a viewer, I like watching people have to show the diversity, not just being able to loop multiple killers, but then also to have the mechanical skill to play multiple killers to emerge up on top in that style of a event.
And we had a nice big debate about it before we started the podcast tonight.
Yeah, we did.
The argument of what style of 1v1 event is better, whether we just go for one or... I personally, my take on this would be that the style that we use for Equilibrium, right, as opposed to what we had for the last 1v1 event, I think both styles work in their own way, right? I feel like that Equilibrium is a good way to get sort of everyone in the scene to really like demonstrate their highest levels of skill, because it forces you to not only be competent with your survivor chases, knowing your map knowledge, knowing where your tiles are, your filler spawns, all that kind of stuff, but being able to play killer and have to play against that as well, depending on what killer gets picked as well, because you got your picks and bans with what killer, instead of just everyone goes against the same killer. I feel like it could really work as a real talent showcase, having it branded more so under Dead by OCE with the Equilibrium style tournament. But the 1v1 event that we had with Dixie's Billy, right? That's a lot more of a casual and chill sort of experience that I think needs to be
everybody involved, right?
Yeah, you can get anyone. You don't have to be like super a part of the community to be involved in it. Like, you could just have people in the scene talk to people who just play DBD and be like, yo, you want to jump in on this. It's just only focusing on your survivor performance, and I think it just makes it a lot easier for people to get into and then in turn want to check out comp.
Yeah, I mean, I know from experience since starting to host the Friday night fights over on my channel. We do it like every other Friday, and we've done 2 Billies, a Blight. This Friday is going to be Bubba, which should be really, really fun. But I've noticed like people from my community like finally actually popping up, talking about as far as just wanting to it started with the first Billy, and now even a couple people it started with that and has now moved into it's now actually moved into the like they're starting to do tournaments. Like they're more like community tournaments. It's not exactly comp, but they're starting to branch out, which is fun to watch people go from just simply playing to pubs to starting to get together teams. A couple people are excited about doing practice and stuff. I'm like, that's really cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's always really, really nice to see the comp scene diversifying and expanding, as it sort of breaks away from the negative stereotype that any competitive scene for any game can really have, and sort of focusing only on the negative, but yeah.
Now, as much as we can talk about the 1v1, that's something that honestly I can't wait to do it again, for real. And if that is something that you guys want to see in chat, let us know and give us some ideas of what kind of killers you would like us to do for the future for that. Because remember, we did do the Billy this last time. I know that some people like to see, I think I saw someone say Nurse in chat. I think that was Spry who said that earlier. For a 1v1. I don't know about Nurse. Nurse could be fun. I just also feel like a cracked Nurse is going to get like everything done in like 40 seconds. So I mean, quick event. I'm for it. However, I did want to bounce this idea off you real quick. I know this is off our script and I apologize. And then we'll get into next week's predictions. But what would be your... well, no. What would be your thoughts though on Spirit now that she has the counterplay to have a Spirit 1v1?
No, I'm not sure if I've already seen this or not. I know another prominent figure in the community, both comp and just in general, Samahel. Yeah, he does his 1v1 events as well. I'm not sure if we've seen Spirit on there, and I'm just Mandela affecting right now, but I reckon it'd be really, really nice to see Spirit, because a lot of people sleep on the fact that it takes a lot of skill to go for this new... well, not, I wouldn't really say new. It has been a while since the change, but emphasizing on how, precise and skilled you can be with your chases and your mind games at loops and stuff. It'd be really, really interesting to see,
Yeah, I feel like that's going to be another one of those similar to like we had seen in this last one with the Billy, where like the top couple will probably have a decent separation even from 4 and 5, because you're going to have to win some of those mind games that are still not so much 50-50s compared to what they used to be, right? But I mean, when you're moving Mach 7 and can even do things like with your moon phasing and stuff like that, like you can do things as a killer. So I still feel like those top 3 would be separate. I just think that would be really fun to watch. I don't know what map I would put her on though for a 1v1.
Yeah, now this is obviously open to a lot of discussion when it comes to picking out a map for a Spirit 1v1 event, but I want to throw a spanner into the works here and say maybe even something like Eyrie of Crows, because you can get a lot of like filler palette loops mostly filler palette loops leading into maybe there's not too many tiles that you can just use that are sort
and
of
you don't have the grass to give away like walking too.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Interesting thought.
Yeah, there's not too much on the ground to notice when it comes to grass displacement, and
I would have never thought that, but that's brilliant. Honestly, that's like brilliant.
Oh yeah,
mark that down and mark that down. Take that. But I know I kind of went off topic with that, but I was just kind of curious because it did just kind of just pop back up into my brain. But this is about, obviously the comp DBD here in the land down under. And we had mentioned we start off week number 4 tomorrow. And tomorrow we've actually got some banging matchups. We've got Revolution versus Genesis, but before that, we actually kick it off with Endless versus Owned, I believe.
Yeah, so these are, I think, just undoubtedly four of the top teams in OCE, right? Revolution, Genesis, I feel like we've seen them clashing together in the past as well, and I think our last tournament or the one before, I'm not exactly certain, but Rev and Genesis were our final two teams, and I think it did end up going to tiebreaker, but I wouldn't quote me on that.
I believe
I'd go
that was
check
Wilted
out,
Rose. I think so.
yeah,
I think
Wilted
I
Rose.
was not on the. I don't think I was on the desk for the finals for that. I think I was out of town or something. That was you and Dyer. But
That
I
was
do
me
remember
and
that being a.
Timmy, actually.
Oh
Dyer,
yeah.
But
But that
yeah,
was a
no.
banger.
Oh, it was.
But yeah, I anticipate. So when we talk about the matchup this week, Endless versus Owned, we have, of course, it's best of 5. So we're gonna be looking at Hillbilly on ARP, Spirit on Wreckers, Oni on Cole. So first off, those are the 3 that are guaranteed to be playing. I love that because it's all. I mean, at least the first 2 fast paced, and I would argue Oni still tends to be a little bit more fast paced, especially on a smaller map like Cold Tower. You're inevitably going to get a hit, right? So to see those for the start, and then Death Slinger on Suffocation Pit and Huntress on Blood Lodge. So other than Spirit, no other S tiers, but a lot of like different strategy style killers. That's interesting.
Yeah, so let's quickly go back to Hillbilly on ARP, right? I think it's important that we talk about which team actually picked these killers, right? And for Endless to pick Hillbilly here, I think it's just, it goes without saying that this is what's gonna get picked here, right? We saw Dixie's Billy in the 1v1 event. You know he's gonna be rocking the Billy here against Owned, and honestly, I don't think Owned are going to be super mad about this pick either. I feel like they have some very, very competent Billies on the team as well. And I'm not looking at Canalev. I have Canna, Pasty. So we've got some awesome blokes on the team there who I think could really perform at Endless's level here. So it'll be really, really nice to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. You talk about Hillbilly ARP for set number 1, and then going from there to Spirit on Wrecker's Yard. So just keeping up the high pace, high action gameplay. That was Own's pick. And then, so I got a question for you, because you would have more experience with this than me. How do you go from 2 fast paced games like that to then really slowing things down in sets number 3 and 4? Because obviously you still need to move with a purpose, but you don't want to be moving too fast either, in like getting like in overcommitting and getting caught out of position, in especially the Oni set. So what's that look like, that slowdown between set 2 and 3? What do those conversations look like?
Well, I feel like there would be a massive emphasis on just slowing down, look at big picture. For example, I think it's very realistic that we're going to be seeing a 1-1 result from the first 2 sets from Endless Owned, right? So you're going to want to be as slow and methodical as you really can be and sort of outlast the other team, right? So especially with, a killer like Oni for the 3rd set, it can really make or break the morale of how the rest of that matchup goes. As winning that Oni set, you can do some dastardly things on Deathslinger. And what shocks me the most is, I know I'm sort of jumping the gun here a bit, but Endless being the ones to pick Deathslinger here, I would have imagined that Owned would have been the ones to go out of their way to pick Deathslinger for that 3rd set, but they've gotten the Oni pick and are still going to have Deathslinger as well. I believe Owned are pretty well known for their Deathslinger performance, so it'll be really interesting to see how that one plays out.
Yeah, we had mentioned how last week was the first time that we had seen a matchup require all 5 sets to determine a winner. And I wouldn't be surprised if, I mean, honestly, if you're showing up for if y'all are showing up for the broadcast tomorrow, I'd make sure you bring your popcorn. I wouldn't be surprised if both of these go all 5. But I think this is one of these matchups, these 2 teams, especially because you had mentioned, right, like both teams I would say are kind of comfortable with each other's picks. No one's I'm not looking at this set like list here and going, that set for sure goes to them. I'm like, probably goes to them, but I could also see, you know what I mean? Like I could also see the other team taking it, which is why I wouldn't be surprised to see this go 5 and end up on the Huntress on Blood Lodge.
Yeah, no. It's always much more enjoyable, so, like for the viewer to know that look, there's no bloody way I'm gonna know if this is gonna be just another 3-0 or if this is gonna go to tiebreaker. And I think without a doubt, I can comfortably say that Endless Owned will go to tiebreaker. But as we go into the next matchup with Revolution versus Genesis, now I want to say that this is probably going to go 3-0 to Revolution, but I really just can't say that anymore. Revolution has very easily been the best team that we've ever had in OCE, but Genesis have proven to us in the past that they can put up a fight to them and they can really do some damage. So I would not be shocked if this went to 5 sets.
Yeah, this is one of those where it's like I feel like momentum could play a big factor in either team really rocking a 3-0, right? But I also definitely can really see this being one of those slow burner, 5-set bangers, especially when we look at the set list, right? Like because you're starting off with, I mean, the staples, the Nurse on Cold Tower, Blight, Blood Lodge, the 2 S tiers. And I think both of those can really, I don't want to say can go either way, but I think just with them being S tiers, I feel like everyone's always so prepared. You know what I mean? That it really could go either way with those. And then you slow things down. The Doctor, Father Campbell's Chapel, Wrecker's Yard for the Cenobite. I love watching Cenobite personally because an inopportune chain hunt can really change a lot of things. And then, of course, the Plague being the final one that kind of like we talked about in the past with those being the decision makers potentially, Plagues, Twins, kind of really breaking things down to the basic of the skill set. I feel like it's going to be like a roller coaster ride, honestly.
Oh, yeah, 100%, especially with the Cenobite as well. Like, I feel like not many people really appreciate Cenobite for who he really is, and seeing just people being so proficient with the use of the chains as well. It's just always a treat, and it always reminds me of iPick on the Cenobite, for sequence.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially when you talk about putting Cenobite on a smaller map, especially so here we're talking about like a Wreckers where, I mean, box logic can get a little tricky if you don't know exactly where you're at on some maps like this because it's a little bit more, I shouldn't say a little bit more, it's definitely like very much like boxy, right? But for the same reason, the inopportune chain hunts, if that box is in a tough corner, and then if you catch it back there in the corner and the pinhead knows where it's at, or sees when you pick it up and gets you down and keeps the team in chain hunt, it can really really change a game.
Without a doubt. And and this is all happening tomorrow, so it's going to be so exciting to see. Now, I want to touch a little bit on Doctor as well, right? And on Father Campbell's Chapel as well. It's been we've seen Doc on Father Campbell's quite a lot, and without a Maurice there as well, it's going to be quite upsetting. Doing the gens at 12 o'clock isn't going to be the same anymore. Yeah, F's in chat for Maurice, guys. Come on, pay your respects. But Father Campbell's for Doctor is just such a traditional map for Doc, and it's so scary with his ability to be able to like hold that top side of the map almost hostage, and getting a hook inside that 3-gen, 4-gen even, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, and I think the big thing with this map too I like is, so the Doctor has the ability to lock down a 3-gen really on either side, right? You talk about usually kind of more on the circus side, it's kind of the better 3-gen.
Yeah, 100%.
But sometimes you can get the 3-gen over on that shack side, but obviously the Doctor's ability to shut down some of the smaller loops requires so the extra communication, the botting, blocking, stuff like that. So I always like watching the Doctor because it really just breaks down to the core mechanics of the game, and it lets you know which teams I think can stay under composure the best. You've got to worry about going and defragging your brain from time to time. You got the red stain sometimes you're worrying about. You've got taking body blocks. You got to worry about where you're rotating to. It's a lot going on in the comp. So sometimes it's those sets that really let kind of like the cream rise to the top, you know?
And I'm just seeing Spry talking about it in the chat now as well. The dead man switch on Doctor. Man, any killer power or perk combination that forces dead man switch to pronk is just too strong, in my opinion. Just using a shock to force people off of gens, and that gen's blocked for the next like
40 seconds or whatever it is.
Up to 45 seconds from when it first activates. So, man, I remember when the change first happened for Dead Man Switch, and I was just in my mind, wait, so if someone goes off a gen while it's active, it's blocked for 45 seconds, and it can just happen whenever. That's insane. That's so dumb. Why is this a thing? But then learning that it's just that 45-second time period, and if 40 seconds later you get off a gen, it's blocked. It's only blocked for like 5 seconds. So
right.
Definitely
I do like that.
Yeah, a much more healthier perk change that we've seen lately, as opposed to things like boil over. But anyway.
so then you talk about, you go from nurse, like doctor, then you got box logic on wreckers if we get there, and then the plague. The plague's been really fun to watch as the deciding set, because you force kind of you have the typical, do we cleanse, do we not cleanse, when do we cleanse? This is always with the conversation with the plague. But not just that. When I look at plague across competitive DBD recently, now it's even when you talk about the add-ons, am I bringing my amulet? Am I bringing amulet because I want more use out of each power? Or am I bringing in the double apple because I plan on grabbing my first power right off rip and then trying to put pressure on to some people? So it's interesting because of the dynamic of how many different strategies on both sides of the matchmaking, right?
Yeah. Now, there was something I wanted to talk about earlier, but it just keeps slipping my mind. But Plague on ARP, right? I think almost every time we've seen Plague in comp, it's always been on a map like Azerov's Resting Place, or I think maybe even Suffocation Pit at one point. Yeah, I'm just going off of memory here, but it's having it as the final deciding tiebreaker set as well. Who's going to be practicing Plague 4 hours a day every day? You know, like there's not really anyone that's sort of known or super well renowned for their Plague performance, as opposed to killers like, you know, Blight or Nurse, which I know a lot of people on Rev and Genesis are going to be super well known for. So to have,
and you're doing that after the up and down of 4 sets, right? Like,
yeah. To have it as the decider, I feel like is the best spot you would want to put that kind of killer, because it puts the most amount of unpredictability and uncertainty with what the result could be. I just love it.
I was trying to look through my playlist real quick on YouTube. I feel like we've seen these two play each other relatively recently, but I could be wrong on that. But I do anticipate, again, if y'all are showing up tomorrow to watch the games, which I hope y'all are, don't be surprised if we've got a long day tomorrow. I wouldn't be surprised if either of these, if not both of these, go 5 sets. So should be super, super exciting. But of course, you know, we don't only have tomorrow's game for week number 4. We've also got Saturday's games, which I feel like Saturday's games, I don't want to say hold more weight because of the teams that are playing, but they kind of do, right? These are teams that are trying to more get their footing and make sure that they're fighting for placing and making sure that they're in the cutoff region and making sure that they're like fighting for placement for the end of the season as well. So you talk about K20, Cat Jam, Assault A1, all of these teams really looking to like kind of piece things together and keep some momentum rolling. And I'm trying to think, I don't know if any of these teams are coming off of a win. I would have to look back to the week before, because A1 was off last week. But yeah, the rest of them, Assault lost to Revolution, Cat Jam lost to Owned. So, I mean, these are a lot of teams that are, trying to bounce back here. K20 lost to Purgatory. Yeah, so these are teams looking to bounce back and really kind of look to move forward in the back half of the season. So when you talk about Cat Jam and K20 being the first one here, Hillbilly, Sheltered Woods, Blight on the Suffocation Pit, Oni on the Cold Tower. So like we go with 3 of definitely my favorite killers to watch when we talk about competitive. I think that's like 3 of my top 4. I mean, that's 3 of my top 4 that aren't number 1 from my tier list on my YouTube. So it should be really exciting. And then if we need the Hunters on Wrecker's Yard and Doctor on Rancid, of course, we're going to be seeing killers on different maps because you also have the ability. We also have the pick and bans process for the maps, just like we do with the killers. So this matchup could get spicy quick.
And hearing Doctor on Rancid Abattoir really gives me a lot of bad flashbacks, I will say, from my comp days. It's scary, man. If you're going against a Doctor on Rancid and you don't get cow tree spawns, man, you guys are in trouble.
Now, between these 2 teams, and I feel bad because we didn't really do predictions on the first 2 games. And I'm going to do predictions here because I do think the last 2 games are I'm expecting 2 5-set matchups tomorrow. I'm not going to lie.
100%. Me too.
It will be a long day for me. If that's the case, and I'm kind of prepared for it. And that's fine, but I wouldn't be surprised. And that's why I don't really want to make a prediction on those ones. Here, though, is where it gets interesting because these are teams vying for placement, really. They're wanting to make sure that they're moving on to the next round of the league and then making sure they're set up for playoffs at the end of the year, right? And again, Cat Jam, K20 both coming off losses here. But I think with the way that K20 looked versus Purgatory versus compared to how Cat Jam looked versus Own, I think I got to give the edge to Cat Jam here. I just don't know if it's in 4 sets or if this is one of those 3-0s. It's closer than, a 3-0 should be sort of situations. I don't think this goes 5 though. But I do think I think with the way Cat Jam looked last week, what was a 3-0 against Owned, I think they will look a little bit better in shape at this point in the season for the dub here, I think.
Yeah, now, see, I have a little bit of a different take, to be honest. I feel like with the, with all of the matches that we have for week 4 here, I think it's the most fair, sets of matchups that we're possibly going to be able to see in the league here, with all the top teams playing against each other, and then all the bottom teams playing against each other as well. So I can't comfortably say if there's going to be 3-0s or if they're going to be going to tiebreakers, but I feel like it wouldn't be crazy. It wouldn't be ridiculous if we saw more of these matchups go into tiebreaker sets, as K20 versus Cat Jam. Like,
you think 5 might even go here? I wouldn't be surprised. I would be thrown off surprise.
I just don't think I can comfortably say, I don't see any one team being significantly better than the other here. Like, both teams have a really good chance to outperform the other, and it's just a matter of waiting and seeing,
Yeah, that's a really good point. And if you end up having to do that on the Doctor on Rancid Abattoir, that stress on that killer, because I feel like then it's more about which killer shows up to perform versus which survivor team shows up to perform, right? Because I feel like if your decisive set is like, let's say a plague, right? It's about which team can kind of stick to their game plan, keep cool, calm, and collect, especially during the slow parts and the fast parts of the trial. But when you get to the Doctor, I feel like that's going to be one of those where I wouldn't be surprised if it's low hook count. It's just about which one gets like the additional fresh hook or something, which is like really big stress in the killer. That's tough.
It is tough, and playing for getting the most stage as possible, and there obviously will be a bit of RNG in place with how the map spawns and who you come across and who's got what build, and that's just why I love comp so much. Is as much as we avoid having RNG being a factor in the game, there's just things that you cannot control, and in this case, map seeding is not something that we have control over and can really determine, make or break a game, so yeah.
And then as far as after this one, Assault versus A1. Again, A1, I believe, was on a break last week. I think that was their off week. But then we had seen Assault, even though it was a 3-0, we're talking about Revolution, right? Like one of those teams. I mean, we talked about Revolution just a couple minutes ago. We're not going to revisit Revolution. But for a newer team, I think coming into a matchup like this after, I think, showing a lot of promise in the Revolution game, wouldn't be surprised to see them walk away with a dub. The question is where, because this set, look at this list here. We're starting on Oni, then we speed things up with the Blight, then we slow things back down again with the Plague, the Huntress, and then if it goes to set number 5, we speed things up with the Hillbilly, and Hillbilly on Cold Tower, which I must say doesn't quite roll off the tongue quite the way some of these other maps, like say Huntress on Wrecker's Yard or Plague on ARP does, right? But it's a lot of back and forth, and for two teams that are newer, to see kind of the diversity and what the strategy is going to have to entail to walk away with the W here. I'm going to be really excited to see what these two teams have game planned.
Yeah, and it's obviously going to be a lot more unpredictable with A1 coming off of their break, but we have seen some strong performances from Assault and from A1 previously in the league here. So yeah, it's going to be like, it's hard to like determine or predict how it's going to turn out, you know. So it's confusing for me here, but with the map picks that we've got for all the killers here, and obviously some very enjoyable killers to watch and play, it's gonna be good fun.
Yeah, I think this should look really, really good. I think this is going to be, as much as we hyped up day number 1, I don't want people to think that day number 2 is going to be underperforming behind that by any stretch of the means. You had mentioned it. These two matchups, including this one here at the end, wouldn't be surprised to see it go 4, maybe 5. I see people saying Assault on top in chat. Again, I think for Assault, I think they are looking to really build on what was what's the best way to put it? It's a 3, you got swept, but like it was something you could build on because you showed promise, right? Like against a really, really good team that was Revolution, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
it should be exciting to see these two out. But those are going to be on the Saturday's game, those last two that we talked about. Revolution versus Genesis and Endless versus Own. That will be Friday. Both days starting at 6 p.m. Sydney time, which is 8 a.m. GMT. If you're like your boy hanging out here on the East Coast, that's going to be 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow morning. So, again, banger matchups this week. I absolutely cannot wait to get down to it. But, Spoker, I think that's just about all she wrote. I really appreciate you taking this journey with me for the podcast for episode 1. This has been an absolute blast. But I need to ask you, the people need to know, where can they find Spokerman?
Well, they can find me in all sorts of places, but I think the number one place you're going to find me is on the Sea of Thieves over on my Twitch channel. But you should follow my Twitter.
Always getting into shenanigans, by the way. I must vouch.
It's been an interesting couple of weeks on the seas, that's for sure. But my socials is just Spokerman, as spelt in Discord and wherever with the 2 N's at the end. If you want to find me, you know where to look.
And as far as for myself, I know it shows there on Twitter at yoboycue. Honestly, that's just about anywhere that you can think of as far as for content creators, man. TikTok, Hover, even though I don't really post on Hover these days. Twitter, you can find me on Steam at yoboycue most of the time if I'm not yoboycue on YouTube. And even YouTube at yoboycue. If you just look that up there, you'll find me there. YOBOYCUE. And feel free to come out and hang out on Twitch. We just we posted up on our last couple YouTubes. I've seen some people from the the OCE scene post in there. Y'all know the type of shenanigans we get into. Feel free to pull up, kick back, relax, and get cozy in Q's corner. You know what I'm saying? But this has been an absolute blast. Once again, thank you everyone for tuning in to our very first episode of the podcast. I know this is different, right? No gameplay, just kind of two awesome guys chilling. You know, the best hair and the best bald guy in the business. What else more can you ask for? So.
Best of both worlds, eh?
The best of both worlds. If y'all are watching and y'all haven't already done so, in that bottom right hand corner, make sure you smack that follow button, turn those notifications on. That way you can come in, kick it every time that we go live again, starting tomorrow, 6 p.m. Sydney time. Big shout out to our production crew in the back for everything that they do, as well as all the staff in the back. They honestly do all the hard work. Me and Spoker had the easy job today. Whoever I'm casting with tomorrow and on Saturday, we have the easy job during the day. So whenever you see the staff team around, whether it's in chat, whether it's in the Discord, make sure you give them a high five. Say thank you. They will greatly appreciate. Of course, they do volunteer all of their time and everything. And again, big shout out to our production, man. Look at this scene. This thing's freaking beautiful. Yo, bros, you're amazing, man. I really appreciate you. And we will be back, like I said, with more tomorrow. And we will have more podcasts next week. Same time, 8:30 p.m. Sydney time. And until we catch y'all back here for the next one, man, don't forget, with everything crazy going on in the world today, be true, be you, be sincere. Game hard and love hard, all right? That's Spoker, man. I'm Q from the rest of Dead by OCE, signing out.